Welcome to Spotlight on Success. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Caper-Taylor, and today, guys, we have an amazing guest, a phenomenal guest. We have a two-time championship professional basketball player, championship with the San Diego Spurs and European League.
San Antonio Spurs.
Yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm. See, that's a woman for you, me mm-hmm. anyway. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much. And also, he's now a current commentator for the Washington Wizards. So guys, please help me welcome Tony Massenburg. Thank you, Tony, for joining us today.
Thank you.
So we're going to jump right in, because my first question to you is, how does one sustain being in a professional league for 18 years as a professional athlete and do it so well and look so amazing doing it?
well, thank you. But first of all, it's one of those things where you have to be blessed to a certain extent, and meaning that you have to be able to stay healthy, and you have to understand what it is you need to do in order to stay at that level. And a lot of times that starts with your health. There are a lot of guys who understand what to do, but their bodies don't hold up. So I've been blessed enough to understand what to do and to have a body that was strong enough to withstand the rigors of playing in the NBA and in Europe. Played in Europe for 2 years. Played in the NBA for 15, and was sort of off and on toward the end of my career. I got into a car accident in 2005 after I won a championship with the Spurs. Broke my ankle and had to rehab for a year. And I was 37 at the time, and I didn't get back on the court again until I was 39. So I eventually got a tryout with the Wizards at 40, and things didn't work out, but I was healthy enough to play. I was able to play, and I was happy with where I got back to physically. So to really answer your question about, how do you do it, it's just determination, and obviously good health, and obviously real intestinal fortitude,
yeah, and
having that and understanding what needs to be done, and most of all, it's just being driven and motivated, and you have to have passion for what it is that you're going to do. Anytime you set out to do something and you have a goal, if you're not passionate about it, when you hit the obstacles, as I hit several obstacles throughout my career, and from injury to being cut to being traded, those are just things that come with the business. And so what I've found in my afterlife, after retiring, is that you still face obstacles, whether they be business or personal, but it's all about having the drive and intestinal fortitude to keep it going. And that's how you manage to do something that you're passionate about for a long time, if you're able to sustain what it takes mentally and physically.
Okay, so I've heard you say mentally, I've heard you say fortitude, I've heard you say passion, having the passion to do it. And I have to say, because you're being very humble, because what you've done is nothing short of astounding. Now, I do follow basketball a little bit. As you see, I had a little hiccup. That's just me, a woman, I kind of spit it out. But there are some women that are very, sport attuned and know what they're talking about a lot more than me. I just happen to have a very special love for you, so I know a little bit. I want to ask you, though, with all that being said, there has to be a secret to your success.
Well, my secret to my success is really it's been God and my family, and that's where I've always found myself in times of turmoil and times of heavy decision making, or when things just weren't going right. You need to have a foundation if you're going to pursue something, because when you try to take control of everything yourself, you realize that you're limited in what you can control. As a basketball player, I could control what I did on the basketball court, but sometimes I couldn't control the decisions that were made behind the scenes as to how much I would be playing or what team I would be playing with. So my job was to make myself the best that I could be and be the best teammate that I could be once I was on a team. I think sometimes people are so goal-oriented that they don't understand the support system that they need. And God and my family has always been my support system. So when people ask me how I was able to do what I did for so long, that really is my answer. I told you from the top of your question that I was blessed in a lot of ways, but I also understood that with some of my physical gifts and attributes that I had to work very hard to hone those skills, because the people that I was playing against were also physically talented and driven and wanted to be the best. And when you're talking about being a professional athlete or playing in the NBA, that's, roughly 450 guys,
Wow.
in a league that is open to everybody literally in the world. I mean, billions of people, are eligible to play in the NBA, but each year only 450 guys can do that.
Wow.
So it takes a sort of focus for you to understand that not only to get there, but to maintain that level, because when you're talking about playing a sport, youth is an advantage. And as you get older, by the time I was 10 years in, 12, 15 years in, like the young guys coming behind me didn't have to work half as hard as I did, because they always had the energy, the same energy that I used to have when I was their age. And so as I matured, I understood some things and made some modifications and just adapted to my circumstances. And I think that's also the second key to being able to sustain something for a long time. It's the ability to adapt to changing circumstances and an environment, because if you're going to pursue anything for a length of time, at some point there are going to be changes, and you have to be able to adapt to those changes.
Okay, I love it. That is great. That is great information, because I heard you say, we have to maintain it once we get there.
Exactly.
And that mental, ability to get smarter and know.
Yep.
And I can see that you understand that you're blessed. And the thing that's blowing my mind is I didn't know that about so many. I know there's so many people that would desire to be an NBA player.
Absolutely,
So
yes.
many people that want to get that would never make it. And that's why I have such admiration for you, because I know where you come from.
Right.
I know your background.
You know the circumstances.
I know the
Yeah.
circumstances. And that's gonna lead me into another outlet right here. We're both very familiar with a small county called Stony Creek, Virginia.
Of course.
We know of it. And I wanted to ask you, because we come from that place, what does it feel like to be you and coming from such a small place and making it and doing the great things that you have done? I mean, did you ever imagine that Tony Massenburg would accomplish the things that you've done and go all over the world and be that NBA professional player that so many people dream of?
Honestly, that's kind of a two-part question.
Yes, it is.
Did I ever actually think that I would do it? To be honest, I wasn't sure.
Okay.
To say that I had no idea, that would not be true either. My mother kept a little book of all my report cards. It's this book. It's a grade school book, and basically it has slots for your report card. 12 slots from first grade to 12th grade for each report card that you get. And in those slots, on the outside of those, each one of those slots in that booklet, there are questions. And one of those questions is, what do you want to be when you grow up? Starting from the first grade all the way to the 12th grade. What do you want to be when you get out of school? And for every year, since I could write in first grade, I always wrote professional basketball player, because I always loved basketball as a kid. And so, honestly, I probably didn't really start believing it until my junior year of college, because I came up in a time, not like now, but when I was in high school, I was obviously a pretty good basketball player.
Yeah, you were.
But I wasn't thinking about playing in the pros as a high schooler. I was thinking about going to college.
Okay.
Because that was what you did at the time.
Exactly.
People were not going to, the only guy that had done it at the time from high school to the pros was Moses Malone. And that was just like a monumental task that nobody really envisioned people being able to do on a regular basis. So my high school mentality was that I want to get a scholarship. I wanted to get a scholarship to the University of Maryland. That was my goal since I was a sophomore in high school. And so I eventually got that once I was able to get some national recognition, and Maryland came calling. And so, from there, I was able to, to go to college and have a pretty good career. But coming from Stony Creek, you asked me how do I feel. I don't know any other way to feel other than this. I'm appreciative of being from Stony Creek. I'm appreciative for being from Sussex County and representing Sussex Central High School the way I did. And I've tried to come back and help some other guys in areas and get notoriety when there have been guys that have been able to draw that type of
Step up
attention.
to it,
We haven't had a lot of athletes with that type of attention that I had at the time, but we've had guys to go on and do great things.
Yes.
We've had guys to go on and get college scholarships. We've had one other guy, Reginald Gibbons, to go out and be a professional football player.
Exactly.
And we've had a number of scholarship football players. So I'm proud to be from Sussex County and Stony Creek, and I hope
Sussex.
that other people
Yeah.
in the county and in the town of Stony Creek look at me as a guy who did make it
Great role
and
model.
be inspiration for people who come behind me who have talent and understand that it's not just about having talent, but it's also about nurturing that talent and going as far as you can go and not listening to people tell you that you can't make it, because I heard that too.
And yes, you did.
I heard that too.
know, yeah.
So I never let that deter me from my goals. And I certainly had obstacles when I got to Maryland. There were things that happened, and I had to grow up pretty quick. And so that's what I'm talking about when I say your ability to adapt to circumstances. I had some things happen at Maryland where I ended up playing for 3 different coaches over the course of my 5 years in school. That's not easy
Right.
to play for different coaches and different systems. But those were things that were happening beyond my control. I just had to be the best student athlete that I could be and continue to push forward and try to achieve my goals.
And not only did you push forward, you've made a very great career out of it, and you've done very well for yourself. And mentioning that, you in December 2013, the school, Succezz Central High School, actually retired your jersey.
Yep.
And yeah, so that had to be a great feeling
That
as
was
well.
a great feeling. That was one of the proudest moments for me at
wow.
Sussex Central High School, because
Okay.
that was 28 years after
Yeah.
I left.
Yeah.
And so to be recognized basically by a different generation, of people, and to be appreciated for me was huge. And I think it sent a message to kids that are there were a lot of kids there that didn't know that I went to Sussex Central High School. There were kids who knew me that didn't know that I actually went to Sussex. And so,
Really?
yeah, there were kids who had seen me on television, had seen me playing for different, and just never made the connection because nobody ever really told them. And, when you look at the time, in between when I was there versus when my jersey was retired, you could understand why. Because these kids weren't even born when I was, obviously weren't born when I was playing. So I think that says a lot. And I think anytime that you have an opportunity to inspire younger people, especially people from your hometown, I think is a positive.
It is a very good positive. Now I'm gonna ask you something. It could be a funny moment, or it could be, what was your most profound memory in all of this in your career? Like, give us something that we could just share with you.
There've been a lot. I mean, there've been a lot of things. I'm not a real, I don't get starstruck very easily.
Okay.
And I just never have. Going back to high school, I've appreciated meeting great people. I don't even remember a lot of famous people that I met until somebody reminds me. But there are a couple of guys that I met that I was very impressed with. One was Muhammad Ali.
Oh,
and
wow.
I met him my freshman year at the University of Maryland in Atlanta, Georgia, and got to shake his hand and got, he was one of my biggest inspirations. Muhammad Ali was a guy, I'm a big boxing fan, and I watched him a lot as a kid, and I always admired him all the way up until he retired. And so to meet him and to shake his hand and acknowledge him for being the greatest was a huge thrill for me. And the second guy was Jim Brown, who I met probably 8 years ago. And again, not a guy that's easily starstruck, but I had to go over and say, hey, Mr. Brown, I really appreciate, the things that you've done in the way of being a positive role model. And obviously, to me, the greatest football player ever. So to me, I got to meet the 2 greatest athletes in their respective sports of all time, in Muhammad Ali and Jim Brown. And there are a ton of other people that I could probably talk to you about, but it's just those were the 2 most impressive figures to me, not just because of what they were able to attain as athletes, but because of the impact that they had off the field, outside of the ring and off the field in Jim Brown's case.
Okay. Now, this is my job because I love when I have humble guests. People, look, spotlighters, he's been humble. You have done something very astonishingly. You've maintained as a professional athlete in a professional league for 18 years, and you've done well for yourself. And that perseverance to do so is what is so admiring about you. So I just wanted to ask you, when it comes back in full circle, What's next for Tony Massenburg?
Right now, just I have other goals. Obviously, my athletic career is what it is, but basketball has always been a passion for me, and so I have some other things I'm involved in the way of training kids, training adults who want to be physically fit.
You think I can learn to play basketball now?
Absolutely,
Too late?
absolutely.
Okay.
It's not too
Okay.
late.
All right.
It's not
All
too
right.
late. You can work on that form.
Okay.
Get that right. But we can definitely do all of that. But that's stuff that basketball has been my life.
Yes.
Athletics has been my life. I've had other business entities, from owning a restaurant to owning a company, car company, where we dealt with dealerships, tons of dealerships, and we did work for them on the side. But basketball has really been my passion and what I know best. So I'm probably going to stick with that. I'm going to probably be doing some training. I like to lift weights. I like to show people how to stay physically fit. And I have a passion for athletics. So that's probably going to be where it is for me. I also have a book project coming out in June, a book called Lessons from Lenny. And it's about the story of Len Bias. You've probably heard of him. He
Yes.
was my teammate my freshman year, who actually accidentally died of a drug overdose
I'm aware
2
of
days
that.
after being drafted number 2 by the Boston Celtics. And so there was a lot of controversy. There was legislative change that came about because this was so impactful at the time. There is a lot that came from my relationship with Len Bias. Unfortunately for him, there has been the most of the focus has been on how he died, and people don't understand the kind of person that he was and the inspiration that he has been, not just to me, but to so many other guys 2, 3, 10 years behind me. The first pick in the draft, Karl Anthony Towns, in 2014, 2015 draft, this last year's draft, this guy, his favorite basketball player was Len Bias. Now, how could a 20-year-old
Yeah.
name a guy that literally died 28, almost 30 years ago now, be 30 years in June? How could he be his favorite player? The reason is because his dad showed him the videotapes and told him about this guy.
And he was a
Len
phenomenal
Bias.
player.
He was a phenomenal player. And what a teammate of mine, Walt Williams, what we're going to talk about in this book, because we're writing a book together, and we're both talking about the inspiration that he was to us, what he did for me as a player, what kind of friend he was, and what kind of brother and son he was to his family, because he comes from a great family. And not very many people know that and talk about that. Everybody focuses on the tragedy. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to draw basically a 30-year string of why I went to Maryland, which was to play with him and to be coached by Lefty Driesell, much like a lot of other guys who came to Maryland after he died because of Len Bias, and they were great fans of his. Me and my freshman teammates were inspired by him because he was the best player in the country at the time and a guy that we admired in high school. So we wanted to play with the University of Maryland because that's where the best basketball player resided at that time. So I got a year to play with my idol, which he was, my basketball idol.
Wonderful.
And to lose him was extremely painful, and everything, the tragedy that ensued and everything that happened after that was traumatic at the University of Maryland, and we talk about that. But we also talk about coming out of that tragedy and helping the university rise to prominence again. And we chronicle how we did that in the book. And we tie it all to Len Bias, because it all does circle back to Len Bias in a very, very positive way. And so this will be the first book that basically sheds a positive light on a subject and a story that everybody deems as just tragic. And yes, it was tragic, but a lot of times, a lot more lives are affected by somebody's loss, and you can touch more people in death sometimes than you ever could in life. And the things that happened because of the way he died, and the things that happened because of who he is, touched a lot of people's lives and saved more lives, in my opinion, than people that were just disappointed because of the way he died. I think he touched more people in death than he ever could have in life.
Wow. And I think it's very admirable that you brought that forward, because that was something I wanted to say, touch upon, but I was afraid, you don't want to just
Yeah, because
offend people.
it's a sensitive subject. I mean, when you're a part of it, you talk about it different than, say, the average person who
Yes.
just opened up the paper and read the
Yes.
story. I was there. I lived it. I went through the aftermath of what was to come because of the way that he died. It was accidental, but some people die accidental deaths and they're celebrated, their legacy is celebrated, and then other people sometimes die and their legacy is tarnished because of the way that they died. So it's subjective depending on the individual, but ultimately the book that Walt Williams and I are about to put out in another couple of months, hopefully, will shed positive light on a story that people thought was just all bad. And the way that he died and the fact that he died was bad, but the things that came from it, there were a lot of good and there was a lot of inspiration, and I'm gonna say a lot of lives saved because of the way he died.
And I can't wait to see it, to read it, and I'm sure everybody else, because I mean, it's such a positive spin on something that was tragic, and that's what we need to bring forth,
Exactly.
the positiveness of his life.
Yep.
And I'm so glad that you were not a part of the tragedy, but a part that you can bring that out for
Yeah.
him and turn it around and make it something positive.
Yep, I was a part of the recovery.
That's what we need.
That's what I say.
Okay, wonderful. Tony, I'm just going to ask you a few more things. I'm not going to hold you forever
Oh,
today.
please.
Okay, so Tony, I want to ask you about a few more things, because Spotlight on Success focuses on walking in purpose, being successful, and helping people to walk in their goal-ordained purposes. Now, you obviously have set a great example, one of the greater players in the in the basketball arena, and I've seen you do a lot. I've followed you some because I know you, but I'm not gonna say I know everything. But I want to ask you, and I want you to tell our viewers out there, for you, what is the definition of success?
For me, I think the definition of success is it's subjective to the individual. I think it really starts with your happiness and success. You set your goal, whatever your personal goal is, and if you are in a position to attain that goal and that makes you happy, then that's success. And there's different levels of success, and I think people determine what their level of success is. What may be successful in the eyes of one person may not be successful enough for another. So depending on what you think it is, and some people will say, well, this person is settling for A, B, and C. Well, if that person is happy, to quote unquote settle in the eyes of somebody, if they're happy, then that's success in their world. And nobody has the right to determine what is a level of success or set the bar for somebody else. So I think you determine how successful you want to be. And if you are working towards those goals that are going to get you where you want to be, and you actually are able to get there at some point, then that's success. And I think it's all about setting the next goal and creating the next challenge. For me, that's what success is. I like to, if I achieve one thing, I like to move on to something else and see what other field can I be successful in, or continue to grow in the field that I am and not limit myself to just one part of it. So I think ultimately your success and your happiness has to come from within, because at the end of the day, you got to look yourself in the mirror and figure out whether you're happy with where you are. Sometimes when you use other people's success to try to gauge whether or not you're successful, it's not really attainable.
Sure.
Or maybe it doesn't apply to you, depending on what you're doing. So you have to look at your world and your circumstances and figure out what would be a successful goal depending on where you're at in your life. And if you can get to that point that you set, then I think that's your success.
Great. I've heard the definition of success be put so many ways by so many successful people, and so many people are being liberated and free because people have gauged what they see other people do as success.
Right.
Younger kids do say, I'm not here until I'm successful.
Right.
Older people are not content their whole lives because they want to be where somebody is at.
Right.
But I've heard success, as you say, speaking about your level of where you feel success is what you attain to do in your goals.
Right.
I've heard people say the joy in your life, as you say, happiness. Success is a defined goal, trying to get there. It's not about materialistic.
No.
It's not about money. I have not heard one successful or millionaire sit in this seat and say it's about money.
No.
It's about materialistic things.
It's about, first of all, happiness comes from within. If you're not happy with yourself, you can make tons of money and buy yourself tons of clothes and cars and houses and all that. I know people who have done all of that stuff and literally multi-millionaires and even billionaires. And I've seen an unhappy billionaire. I've seen several unhappy millionaires.
Yeah.
And so when you see that, at a relatively young age, then you realize that the answer and the key to happiness and success does not lay in a dollar. Money is what we need to survive, but it's not necessarily going to bring you all the happiness that you want. And so with that being said, yeah, that's why you haven't seen very many millionaires sit back and say, I'm happy to be a millionaire, because there are other things in life that are bigger than money. And if you have the mentality where you can truly appreciate that, then just making money, even if you make a ton of it, is ultimately not going to always keep you happy. So everybody likes to have money because it's what we need, and it affords you the opportunity to have some flexibility to do whatever you want. And everybody wants to have as many options as they can. Money definitely does that.
Yes.
But ultimately, money can also bring problems. I've seen people have tons of money and have tons of problems. I've seen people who honestly have said they were happier when they had less money because they had less people coming after them. They had people who they didn't have to question if they had ulterior motives. So when you're dealing with different individuals at different levels financially or just along the way in the process of trying to attain some success, you learn about these things, and ultimately you figure out what it is that makes you tick.
Okay.
And so for some guys, they're not going to stop until they're billionaires if they're millionaires, and they're not happy millionaires because they have aspirations to be billionaires, and they're not going to be happy until they get there. And then sometimes once they do get there, then it's like, okay, now I'm a billionaire. And then guess what? There's still something else that they're not happy about. So that's why I say, no matter how much money you make, that doesn't guarantee that you're going to be happy.
And this is very impactful, because coming from an NBA player and a person who has done very well for yourself, it makes a difference when people hear somebody who's there and who has done that, who has achieved it, say, listen, money is not what you want to pursue.
Right.
You want to pursue that success based upon what it is that you desire to do and what it brings you joy. So that's the very impactful part. And I'm so glad that you came here with us today, that you accepted coming here and speaking to us, because you're phenomenal.
Thank
you know, NBA player, and I also know that you're a commentator now, analyst, I think is the correct word, on Washington Wizards, CSN Live.
CSN,
Is that Tuesday night?
That's during the regular season. Obviously, they play 82 games a year, so we have different people's schedules. So I don't work every game, but sometimes it's every other game or a couple times a week, or whatever the case is, depending on the schedule. Sometimes it's 3-4 times a week, depending on what they're doing. But I'm scheduled in like a lot of other people, not a lot of other people, but about 2-3 other people, and they rotate us all on the show just to give some variety and different perspectives. So I love doing it because I talk about the game that I love, and just sitting down and watching these young guys grow and get better, and talking about what the prospects for the team are going to be and what they need to improve on. It's still in my world of basketball, something that I'm very familiar with and very passionate about. And so, again, that's happiness for me when I'm sitting there talking about basketball. It's not an NBA contract like what I had before, but again, I'm happy doing what I'm doing. And so, and that's how I look at it. I have aspirations to grow it and do, more of it. But it goes back to, ultimately, you have to be happy with what it is that you're doing, and to me, that's a form of success.
Okay, and we're going to be looking for you, and not only just me and the viewers, I call them my spotlighters, but of course a whole lot of younger guys, especially guys that know now where you're from. They have the desire and goal to say, listen, I can do it. We saw Tony do it, we saw Reginald do it, we can do it. And I think having a mentor is the greatest thing ever, to have somebody to aspire to and bringing it back to be able to show. Now, we do know that we have people on Canada, everybody's Facebook, different places, YouTube, that will see this all over the world. But for me, it's especially good that people in this community can say, okay,
Yep.
Tony did it, I can do it.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
important because we don't. When you grow up in Southern Virginia, I live in Northern Virginia now, and it's closer to DC.
Right.
But Southern Virginia has a lot less opportunities than Northern Virginia because there's just not as much going on, and so sometimes it's a little bit harder to be seen or found. And so, with that being the case, you have to make your mark as impactful as you can. We live in a different world now than
We
the
do.
one that you and I grew up in.
That's right.
And now it's not as hard to be seen because there's so many more media outlets. There's social media. There are things that are available to you that if you're willing to work and if you're good at it, somebody will see you. And
Yeah.
if they see you, they will come to Stony Creek, Jared, or anywhere else in Southern Virginia to seek out your talent. But you also have to be passionate about it and understand that there are other people out there who also have the same goals as you are. And so you have to be prepared for that competition, and you have to be committed in the way of trying to get the most out of yourself.
Okay. Now, and I'm gonna close it up, but I'm gonna say one or two more things now. The impact and the great thing that you have done. We might as well put it out there. Stony Creek had one light when we was growing up.
Yeah, now they got two.
Yeah, man, they got two.
Right.
We may have had a store. You know, we all went to the same store.
Yep.
So you have overcome some very major obstacles and done something very great. And this is what I want, anybody to know, that regardless of your circumstances, and you had some things that people, some haters, still gonna have haters these
Always.
days,
Yeah, that's anybody. That's
Yeah.
not just me.
Yeah.
It's just anybody. Sometimes when you come from a place where people haven't seen a lot of success, the mentality shifts to you can't. And it's not because you physically can't, but it's just because nobody's ever seen anybody do what I did in 1985 in the way of being one of the first guys in the county to get a big time D1 scholarship. That had never been done. And so there were a lot of naysayers, or there were people who saying that I wasn't going to make it, people who were saying that you weren't good enough. And, the same people, who were questioning whether or not I was going to be good enough to play at the University of Maryland after they'd offered me the scholarship
Yeah,
already,
yeah.
were the same people who saw me the first nationally televised game of my freshman year. I was in the starting lineup
Yeah.
against the Duke Blue Devils
Yeah.
in 1985. I'll never forget it. It was my
Yeah.
first nationally televised game, and it was a huge moment for me. And so when I think back on that, and I think about how young and green I was to the world just as a freshman. I was just a college freshman. I was 3 to 4 months before that nationally televised game, I was down at Succezz Central High School.
Yeah.
And you fast forward, roughly 4 or 5 months, and now, the whole world's watching me play for, at the time, one of the best basketball teams in the country, which we were. So that is a story that I like to tell kids, especially from my hometown, because it proves that just because you start in a small place doesn't mean that that's how you're going to end
I
up.
made it,
Yeah.
I did it, I retired.
Yep.
Let me ask you something on a lighter note, because you still playing basketball?
No, I actually, the only time I play now is sometimes I go in and I shoot. I don't play in any leagues. I lift weights. I try to stay physically fit because I've just gotten in tune to doing that. I've been working out since I was 17, so it's kind of hard to just stop. For me, it is. I see it happen all the time.
Yeah.
Guys just stopping it.
You play for fun?
Yeah, I play for fun. I shoot around. I'll play 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 with my friends sometimes, but I don't play in any leagues or anything like that because honestly, I played basketball at the highest level, and the way that I play basketball now is at a higher level than pretty much most people, but it's not what not what I'm accustomed to. I always used to say that, and I always like saying now that I'm 48 years old.
And
Father
look
Time
good.
took away my pilot's license. I used to be able to fly. I can't fly anymore. So, I just, the style of basketball, the stuff that I used to be able to do, I can't do half of it anymore because nobody ever could at this age. Michael Jordan couldn't do it.
Yeah.
You know, nobody can do it. Once you get to a certain age, you can still play, but you can't play like you played in your 20s.
Okay.
And so, but I still have fun playing, but I just don't, it's just a little different for me now, but I still like playing.
Okay. All right. In closing, I'm going to ask you one last question. What would you tell our viewers who aspire to be successful or walk in purpose, or either of those guys who, there have been some guys we know that, I mean, their life was trying to get to the NBA and did not make it there. What would you tell guys that's trying to aspire and be successful and walk in purpose?
The key to life and the key to sports, so that you heard me say it earlier, it's about adaptability.
Yeah.
And when you're somebody that's trying to make it in a sport in particular, and if you encounter obstacles, or if you get to a point after trying so hard you realize you're just not going to make it, then it becomes about changing your identity to a certain degree. You were trying to identify yourself as an athlete or as an NBA player or football player or whatever the case is, and if that's not working out for you, now it's about changing and adapting to what it is that you're going to do now. And so if you can find a way to further your passion, meaning continuously work in that field, great. But if not, then you have to find something else that you can be passionate about. And so that doesn't mean that you are a failure because you have to change your course. It just means that maybe there's success for you in another field different than the one that you had designated for yourself.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay, spotlight on the Succezz. Listen, this has been a phenomenal guest. 2-time championship.
One championship.
Okay. One championship.
Yeah.
See, this is why he's here, to correct me. So
talking basketball.
Talking basketball, yeah. But I am so excited. He did the thing, NBA player, 18 years, and this will be an inspiration for so many of us. So thank you for joining us on Spotlight on Succezz. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This wisdom that you can't get on the street right here.